Assuming that there'd be several here that had not heard our original presentation, I want to give a little bit of background so you understand the story and how we got here. This is the team for Reproductive Solutions Incorporated. The team has been together since the company was formed, which was 2009. As we were doing research, and originally the focus of this technology was in the cattle markets. And we did quite a bit of work in that area, also in the equine markets, and we found out that there really wasn't a market there to support what we needed to have in order for the venture to be successful. And so we did a pivot, and we looked at the human market. And as we worked in the human market and did some clinical trials, we were real excited with the results. So what's the product and what's the results? The product is called Protex. You have some samples that you can look at. This is used in fertility clinics. And the process at a fertility clinic today, when a couple goes in, they're going to determine how fertile the male is, and they're going to do that by giving him a specimen cup, urine cup, and send him down the hall and tell him that they need a collection, and then they've got like 30 minutes to analyze that because it begins to degrade almost immediately. Does this happen very often? There are 7 million couples in the U.S. that are doing this every year. So we looked at that process and what can we do that would keep that collection modal. And so they looked at what goes on in terms of what triggers the sperm to take off, and I know y'all have seen the pictures of sperm are swimming around like crazy. That's because they've been triggered that it's time to go. They've left the male and now they're on their kamikaze mission, and they begin to immediately use up their energy, and at that point they're still in a cup, there's no place to go, so they're just dying off. So if you'll open that cup, you'll see that the inside of it is conical in shape. It just means that when the sample is collected, instead of it splashing out across the bottom of a large surface area, it concentrates into a very small area. We recommend that the clinics also put 1 milliliter of media in there before the collection. Media is like a buffer, an extender that's used in the process, but typically it's used towards the end when you're diluting the sample before you're actually going to use it. If you use the media at first, we found out that it surrounds that sample, so there's virtually no surface area exposed. It helps to diminish the amount of light that's going to hit it before we actually close it up. And inside of that plastic, there's fins in there that create a dead surface area that's between the insulator and the outside. So instead of there being a rapid temperature drop, actually whatever the temperature is of that collection is going to determine what the temperature is inside that collection cup. So really, what's the benefit? What does that mean? In terms of the couples, it means that the practice today is, because there's so little time to handle the sample, that collection has to be done in the clinic. In our case, if you collect in that device, it's going to maintain its temperature and it's going to be fine for 6 to 8 hours. So a couple can collect at home, which is a huge benefit in terms of the process the couple is going to go through, particularly for the male. But the other is it also reduces stress. And stress is one of the things that we know really does contribute to a loss of fertilization in the sample. So when we looked at the clinical trials, we did clinical trials at the Texas Tech Health Science Center Clinic in Amarillo and here in Lubbock. And the 2 biggest things that we saw were that the strength of the sample itself, if you collected in Protex versus the regular collection method, would be up about 40%. What does that mean? Well, that means typically if the male's the problem, and 6 years ago, the male was a problem 35% of the time. Today it's over 50%. Why that's going down, we don't exactly know. we're seeing that drop. There was an international study that was released in January this year. Worldwide, if you look at the fertility of males, human males, fertility has dropped 60% in the last 4 decades. So there's a huge concern about what's going on in the environment and what's causing that. But back to, if you're in the clinic and the male's a problem, you're immediately going to IVF procedures. There's no insurance on this, and so the couple's looking at $15,000 a pop. If you can take that same sample and you can increase its viability 40%, now they're candidates for IUI procedures, which are $500. So there could be a huge break. So why would a clinic want to sell lesser procedures versus the more expensive? Well, the CDC considers infertility a disease. And so all the centers have to report what they're doing in terms of how many procedures did you do, what were they, how successful were they, et cetera. For a clinic, the average clinic using this device versus the regular, most of the time we're going to be successful about 40%. If they use this, they're going to move up to about 60 to 65%. So if you're a couple looking for a clinic, who's the most successful, you can look at the numbers and see, what kind of results are they having in Lubbock versus in some clinic in Houston or wherever. So it helps to drive patients to the clinic, and the fact that the sample lasts much longer, the geographic area that a clinic can serve expands. When we first started talking to clinics and we were doing all of our research, we got a little bit of pushback in the original surveys. No, we're not going to let people collect at home because they don't know what they're doing. It's got to be in the clinic still. And now as we've continued to go around talking to the clinics, we're finding out that what we propose, that it's a benefit, that a lot of them now, that's going to be the method that they allow. The other reason, or the other thing that we saw besides the viability of the sample going up is when we looked at how often a pregnancy was derived, and when it was derived that it went to full term and delivered a healthy baby. And this is in our trials between the two clinics. If it was collected the regular way, the chances that it was going to go to full term and deliver a healthy baby was 40%. When it was collected using our method, the results were 100%. So there's a huge probability that they're going to be not only successful, but the baby will be healthy when it's delivered. So that's kind of the background on the company and what the device does. Part of our story, we were just plodding along doing the research and trying to move things forward. Didn't really have much momentum until we got involved with the Innovation Hub. And the fact that we were involved in programs did a couple things. It pushed us forward and made us get out of the box. Our researchers, all they want to do is stay in the lab and make things prettier and last longer and that kind of thing. They had to help me and get out of the lab. Let's go talk to customers. That made a huge difference in how they perceived what needed to happen to this, that somebody actually needs to buy this if they're going to be successful. We ran into questions through the process about the patent life. This has been going on for quite a while since the patents were filed, which were filed, they're owned by Tech. We licensed the technology back. And so the more that we looked at that, if we were going to attract investors initially, or if we wanted to really be an acquisition target, we needed to have a longer runway as far as the protection of the patents. And so that took us in another direction. We're in the process now of version 2 of this cup that is incorporating some new technologies actually into the plastic that's inside that will actually give off a gas, so to speak, that will help to eliminate the antioxidants that typically will have a sample to degrade. So that's in the works. It will be an improvement patent, so it wraps around the one that exists, and we think we'll have that filed by sometime late spring next year. When it issues, it takes our protection out to 2032, so it gives us as much runway as we need. We ran into we came up with, through conversations with our mentors that were assisting the team, to take another look at the FDA process that's involved with this particular device. Because our original legal counsel had said that we would be required to do the 510K process, which is a long, drawn-out filing process with the FDA. It takes 3 or 4 years, about $400,000 to get through the process. And we took another direction, another look at it, changed legal counsel that actually had people that they could go to that are inside the FDA to help get opinions, and we found out that if we approach things in a certain way, that this device could be exempt from that process. And so that's where it stands today. This is a Class 1 medical device. If it's used for just collecting samples, if that sample is going to be used to actually perform a treatment, it becomes a Class 2 medical device, but it's in a category of assisted labware and is considered exempt. So what that means is we passed all of that process and took a much shorter path to get everything set up with the FDA. The other thing that was important in our story is that stuff happens that you don't expect. In my case, I'm the only business person in the process. As we get through this incubator process, my wife's cancer comes back, and so I'm totally out of the picture for 6 or 7 months as we take her through hospice. And during that time, the people that were just lab people became business people. And so they stepped up, and that took us to the point that we could achieve all of the milestones that we needed to graduate out of the program. We ran into another hurdle once we graduated from the program, and that was we had understood that Class 2 medical devices, this one, would not be required to do something called UDI compliance. We found out as we were getting ready to actually finish up our labeling that goes on the product, and the product is actually a surgical pouch like this that's sterilized when the client gets it. We found out that they changed that in December, and now we do have to be compliant. So what does that involve? Well, it involves generating this barcode. How do you generate that barcode? Well, the first thing you do is you have to go to one of 3 agencies that the FDA works with. In our case, we went to the HIV/CC. And what do you do with them? You pay them a fee, and they give you a license that you can make a barcode. Finished with them, you have to have another piece of information, which is what's the global definition and number of your device. And there's a global agency, a global medical device nomenclature agency, that every medical device that's used around the world is registered there. So if you want to know something about a device, you can get the barcode, and it's going to take you back, and you can find out in your language what's the definition of this product, how it's supposed to be used, et cetera, et cetera. There's not a product like this. So we had to go to the committees for them to come up with something new. So that took us weeks of going through that process. And guess what? They wanted a fee. So you get that piece of information, and then you have to come back with that. And you have to go back to the FDA through something called the referrals process, which means that you're taking the information you got through the first 2 steps and you're getting it into the FDA, and you're registering the facility where these specifications are made, and you're listing that the product is going to be available on the market. Once you get that done, they give you another number, and then you take those numbers and you go to the device identification barcode generation process, which is back through the first guy. So you pay another fee, and that's when you actually get this barcode. And there's a specific barcode, and it's different depending on how that might be packaged. There's the package like I was showing you has one barcode. If I'm going to sell them in a box of 25, it's another barcode. So that everything can be traced back to the initial specific product. And then we go into the global device identification database to go in and file all this information so that everybody worldwide and through FDA knows what we're doing. So we finally got through that process.
How many months did that process
It took 2 months.
2 months?
2 months and about $12,000 for barcode. So where are we today? Initially, we were looking at doing convertible debt once we graduated to fund this thing and to keep it moving forward. As we kept looking at it and we kept scratching, we decided, well, we're going to take a run at bootstrapping this. And we did that through each of the partners putting in some money, and then Dr. Dusty Johnson, who was one of the people on the team. She's our Vice President of Marketing. For the last 11 years, she's worked for people like Abby and EMD Serrano. She's the fertility expert in the United States. She quit her job and went out full-time talking to clinics, paving the way for us, and she's been doing that just on a deferred salary basis. I've been full-time since May on the same basis. So we're just self-funding. We're okay at this point. Depending on how things ramp up, we may be going after some interim financing in terms of loan in order to scale up as fast as we need to. Part of what helped us do this also is a manufacturing partner, Stincor, who's in Jacksonville, Texas, who's an FDA approved plastic injection molding process, and he's just super excited about this whole thing. So he's done out of the way extraordinary things to help us along in terms of terms, and we're just putting in his own technologies, that kind of thing. We couldn't ask for a better partner. Because originally we were working with cattle, when the patents were filed, we filed in all the largest cattle producing areas in the world. This patent covers the construction of the cut, covers the use of media at first collection, and covers the methodology that we're using. And so we have that protection virtually any place in the world at this point. And our focus, of course, is the United States, and we're rolling out first to Texas clinics. But we do hope within a 5-year period that we've got some partners, channel partners, that will help us to go global in other aspects. And actually, we may be going global sooner than that, kind of a back doorway. So we're looking for purchase orders because we have to validate price point, model, it's a lot of work. So the first purchase orders came in 27th of last month. On Saturday, we leave for the international conference in Denver, American Society of Reproductive Medicine, with our samples, and we anticipate taking quite a few orders from there. Space, once this starts up, can't stay here, got to have a place to ship, etc. So that's already been negotiated. We know where we're moving in January. So that's in place. Texas fertility clinics, we haven't officially rolled out, but we're getting purchase orders in from the clinics that have been watching us and know what we're doing. We're projecting that by March of next year, excuse me, that we will have passed the $1 million point in orders. Actually, we're going to be opening to the fertility clinics earlier than we originally anticipated. That'll be next week. We're in Denver, and that's because of just the calls that we're getting. People saying, "Is this ready? I'm going to take a look at it," etc. We're in the process, back to maybe going global, of completing an agreement with a company that's in the incubator at Harvard, Cambridge, called Give Legacy, and their target is the Middle East. They're trying to come up with a process kit that they can collect from males and then transport that back to where it can be cryopreserved so that the legacy is there if something were to happen with the male. Evidently, that's a huge market over there. Anyway, we're in the process of finalizing the agreement. They needed a container to use, in that process and they've chosen ours. So it kind of opens another door that we initially were not looking at. We think next year that the sales will hit $20 million. That was our projection. We're still feel very safe with it. That was our projections. If it was used only when the mail was the problem, clinics are telling us they're going to use it on every collection, so that kind of skews the numbers the other way. And that's based on us being able to penetrate 10% of the market. And based on the initial feedback that we're getting, I think we're going to blow past that. If we do, that's when the financing will need to be in place, at least for a little while, so that we can ramp up and get the additional molds made, et cetera. And that's all that needs to happen here. We're able to, we have enough product on hand right now to generate almost 20,000 units. These are sold in a box of 25. That box runs $1,800. Costs me about $125 to make it. So there's a huge margin that's available. We did have other opportunities for fulfillment houses to do this, but part of our whole focus in going into this in the first place was economic development and generating jobs local. So our focus is that we'll come up with a distribution center that'll be here in Lubbock. And as we wrap it up, we figure probably about 25 full-time employees that'll be handling the sales and the fulfillment process. So that's where we are. Questions?
That water's here. That's water.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you're starting first rollout is here in Texas, right?
Yes.
So why not in one of the 7 or 9 states in the U.S. That actually insurance companies have to support a certain amount of IUI, IVF treatments, and it's their own personal interest, which we know is a big drive for insurance companies to reduce their costs. So if they have to support, let's say Massachusetts, up to 6 IVF treatments, if they can, get couples pregnant within 1 or 2, or save money by doing this, they would love this. Like, why drag the 6 treatments? They have to pay for it. Most of it costs them a fortune. They go for cups like this, they'll be, hey, we save ourselves a lot of money.
That's an excellent point. That's one of the few states that do cover. The reason we're starting in Texas is that we wanted to keep things close with people that we know in terms of working out the kinks, the ordering process, that kind of thing. But we'll be going out from Texas pretty fast. Some of the clinics, for instance, in Austin, the clinic there that wants us to ship, when we start shipping, they want us to also ship to their clinics in DC, because they're part of that network. And so,
I can see this easily becoming the standard collection.
I'm sorry?
I can see this easily becoming the standard collection in no time at all. Standard collection device. I mean, the standard is your regular blood vials or whatever.
That's our dream.
Yeah, well, I was a classmate of Lindsay's and a student of Dr. Preet's and Dr. Johnson's, and this is beautifully streamlined. You'll be everywhere in no time.
What are your barriers?
Oh, he's got one.
Oh, sorry.
And then you.
Hi. So when you were talking about the collection, or the way that it was constructed, you said that there's an insulating layer in between, where there's nothing in between there. I was curious, is that a vacuum layer, or is that just air that you...
It's just air.
It's just air? Have you ever thought about making it more of a vacuum layer? You could kind of do something like a Yeti cup, in which you get even more thermal protection.
Actually, we've considered talking to Yeti. In case you want a high-end.
Well, I'm just thinking if it is that vital for...
Because Yeti's a tech company.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that if it's that vital for the temperature to stay constant, having a vacuum layer, making it endure, would increase how, or there would be less change in temperature. So.
Thanks.
What are your barriers? Like what It's on all the positives,
The barriers
what keeps you
are
up at night?
being able to ramp up fast enough to meet the market demand. That's the biggest thing. In terms of sales force, we don't see that as being a barrier. Dr. Johnson knows all these clinics on a first name basis. She's already talked to people around the country. If we need to put on reps that'll come on board with us, we can cover that side. It's going to be, can you manufacture it fast enough to keep everybody happy?
Have any,
I hope that's the problem we have to solve.
right? Have any companies reached out to you? Are you being headhunted to just purchase your patent and run with your idea?
No, nobody's after us yet.
They will be.
But that's the exit strategy.
Oh, sorry.
It is, yeah.
We want to be gone in 5 years.
When do you?
And we think, and part of that, of what we learned in going through the process with talking with the mentors, we had one mentor who's in another part of the country that was involved in our meetings. In his background, he had 2 different companies that were plastic injected molded medical devices that he grew the company and he sold them off to like Johnson & Johnson or whatever. So he walked the path that we were looking at. And part of, one of our biggest questions to start with was, what did we sell this for? Because, you know, if you're in the lab, you talk to those guys, they want to give it away. Just so the technology gets out there. But I want as much for it as I can get that the market's going to let me have. And part of what pushed us forward, and we really got to go out there and find out, was that when we were talking, like they were wanting to sell this for like $10, $12, maybe 20, was this mentor saying, you won't be an acquisition target. Not at that kind of price point. You're not going to generate what they need to see in order for it to be worth their time to come and buy you. And basically the target was, if you're not doing $100 million a year with some good margins, then nobody's going to talk to you. So we ended up, $79 was the price point that we began to validate as we did the surveys, as we actually got down to working through things with some clinics, what ifs. The average price is like $73. And based on our 5-year projection, if we do 35% of the market and are only collecting when the mail's a problem, that's a $250 million company, so you can look at you. If it goes the other way, if it's, you know, every collection, now it's a $500 million company, so.
Be a red top pile.
And Texas Tech owns 6% of our company as part of the licensing agreement. And we'll receive a 6% royalty on the sales. So there's some nice money coming back into Tech.
So if we have connections that we want to bring to you, is that an opportunity for us? Or, I mean, are you interested in entertaining investors now? Or are you wanting to get further down the road?
Not right now. That may change depending on how fast we have to ramp and what does it look like in terms of what we could do with investors versus just doing it through a loan process.
Okay.
Can you talk about, you said Tech filed the initial patents and you're licensing from them?
Yes.
And in return, so can you talk about that? One of them, they funded the whole patent process?
Yes.
And now they're gonna get some cutback, which is 6% and the company is 6%.
They funded the entire patent process. The people that hold the names on the patent are Crane and Johnson. They're on the team. So that being the case, that's kind of a nice little extra for them, because when the royalties go to Tech, most of it goes back to whoever's on the patent.
Yeah.
So it kind of swings back around. Our agreement in terms of licensing the patents was that we were licensed for all mammalian species. So, you know, Human was one of the markets, but we could still go cattle, horse, whatever. We could, if someone buys us, we could only license, allow them to continue on the human side, and we still have markets to develop, you know, on the other. The agreement with them was $25,000 was the initial payment or fee. It's $5,000 a year renewing. They get 6% equity and 6% royalty. And then we also are reimbursing all of the patent costs. But all of that is triggered by whenever FDA, if FDA is required in the direction we're going, all that is triggered once FDA says you're good.
So now you're paying off the patent itself?
Yeah.
And when you finish paying it off, do they still get their percentage or?
Yes,
Yeah.
they'll get that forever. And if we sell the company, they'll get 20% of that.
Are there new competitive technologies
No,
emerging?
nothing that we found.
How long did your studies run? Now that you're saying that 100% of the babies born using your system, how long did those studies run? You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure.
Like your clinical studies
Uh-huh.
showing that 100% of the sperm that was coming from there, your babies, the babies using this system,
Mhm.
100% healthy. How
How many did you
How long was that
test?
monitored?
how long was that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you said it was
That was monitored just during
just for
the trials, which was over a 2-year period.
2 years.
So I know that
Just
it
making
started
sense.
about 20 years ago, right? The research?
The research itself started almost 20 years ago.
So what was, and you might have said this already, and I think I know the answer, but what was the turning point in when your group, or at what point was it like, this is happening? Because it's just been going on for a long time. Like, what was the turning point, do you think?
I think we'll go back to the technology history for a minute. Originally, there was a company called Embryonics that licensed this technology. They were based out of Boston. They held the technology for several years. They couldn't make it go. It was kind of cumbersome in terms of how they were trying to market it. They were looking strictly at cattle. They couldn't raise enough money to keep going, so they turned it back to tech. That's the part where I got involved. I had met these researchers when I chaired the Lubbock Regional Bioscience Initiative. And as that shut down, they had asked me, we have a chance to license this technology, would you help us from the business side? So that's where we started working on that. We thought we had a license with tech. We had a memo of understanding for it, and then we found out tech licensed it to somebody else. A company called Gamete, which is through LGE execs, also in Boston. LGE thought tech was going to put together the venture fund, and they weren't going to have to do very much raising money. That part would come from tech. Tech backed off of that, so they turned it back. And that's when we went ahead and jumped in, and we were working with LGE execs just because we had so much history with this. There was a thing at that time called Emerging Technology Fund, and so we presented for LGE to the Emerging Technology Fund, and we were awarded to go to Austin to compete for those dollars until another company here that was doing cancer research thought their deal was better, and they screamed at the governor's office and said, nobody from West Texas, man. If you guys can't play, then you're not going to play. So we took the technology and kept on that same path of the cattle. And that's when we really started getting involved with producers and talking about what it can do for you and what the increased rates would be based on all the studies we had done with cattle. And we just found out people aren't going to pay what they need to. Yeah, it's an increase, but they're happy where they are. And so they said, well, what about the human side? So the turning point was, the first turn was seen from the clinical trials what could happen.
Yeah.
And then we were trying to figure out, well, how do we really get this thing pushed, and then innovation hub springs up, and that was the biggest turning point. To have a place to go that you can get what you need in terms of help to accelerate getting commercialized.
You got the manufacturing partner from one of the mentors.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the value of the knowledge and the connections that these mentors have is just amazing.
And part of my background is product development, vice president for Gary Products Group, the plastic
I was
tabs,
about to
the
say,
plastic
if they're not
tabs you put up
involved,
your Christmas lights.
yeah.
And I also worked for industrial molding for a while, so I knew the injection molding process. And I thought it was perfect. Industrial molding is here, and when I worked for them, they did have an FDA house on the side. We're ready to do this on the human side, and I'm going to them for quotes, and they don't do FDA anymore. Somebody else has bought them. They don't care about jobs in Lubbock, and so I'm going to have to go to just outside Boston to get this produced. And I really wasn't happy with that. And I brought that up in our first mentor meeting, and this one mentor who had walked the path already, he goes, well, the molder I used is right there in Texas, in Jacksonville. I talked to Keith, so I got in the car and went and talked to Keith. It's a great marriage.
Any other questions? All right, so what can we do as a 1 Million Cups community to support you?
Tell everybody about it.